My skin is black.
What you looking
My
at?
skin
Yeah,
is black.
I feel so good to be black right now.
is black.
What you look-
Welcome to episode 127 of the BlackNFashion Podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And of course, I must make sure I call to attention, guys, to make sure you are sending in your black notes. We want to hear from you. We want to know what your struggles are, what we can help you with. So this goes out to designers, creators, anyone in that creative community that just needs some advice or tips and stuff. Please send in your black notes. We also have the I Am BNF campaign. Make sure you guys talk about why you want to be black in fashion. It's just a 1-minute video clip. We would love to share you on our page. And of course, we would love to just hear your story and talk about what being black in fashion means to you. So today I am joined by Tori Nichel. She is the founder and chief creative officer of Maison Black. Maison Black is an online e-tailer that exclusively sells products by black designers, creating an immersive experiences through pop-up activations all the way across this country. And then son, I'm going to manifest that we'll be in other countries by next year too. And then son.
Yes.
So, thank you so much for joining me today, Tori. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I really wish you was here in person. I love those.
do too. We're going to do a part 2 in person.
Absolutely. So I like to start every podcast with just like a little icebreaker. It's called This or That. So I just want you to tell me what you prefer over the other, okay?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, here we go. Motorcycle jackets or trench coats?
Moto jackets.
Moto jacket. Flare leg or skinny leg?
Flare.
Flare. Studs or hoops?
Hoops, always.
A-line dress or shift dress?
Neither.
I like that.
Probably
She
wanted
said
to say that for the moto and trench coat, but
it's okay. You gotta have one or the other one. And then last one, I always trip people up: side boob or under boob.
Oh Lord!
You gotta expose one.
Yes, listen, I got side boob for days, but the under boob is where it's at.
Okay. All right. So I just want you to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from and when that fashion bug bit you.
All right. Well, I am Tori Nichel. I am originally from the Detroit area. I call New York home. And the fashion bug bit me when I was about 7 years old.
Nice.
So it's been a minute.
It's been a minute. You know what's funny?
I mean, I'm only 25, so it hasn't been that long.
Oh, okay. And if I'm also from the Midwest, and the fashion bug bit me when I was 6. My grandmother taught me, and I'm from Chicago.
Okay. Yes.
Yes,
You know
so
what?
like we Midwest girls, and New York is home for me.
Yes. You know what? You find a lot of designers, a lot of creatives out of the Midwest. It doesn't even surprise me anymore. It's
Right.
amazing.
Right. So tell me a little bit about how you got started. Like some of your achievements. I know that you've been in the Washington Post, Vogue, Women's Wear Daily. So and I feel like you're so young. So when did you start Maison Black? And how did it come about? Like what's the background story for it?
All right. Okay, good. I'm glad we started with this chapter because I'm like, you want me to go all the way back to the beginning of fashion.
Some people have
stories.
interesting stories. They be like, girl, I was using my grandmother's sewing machine and she called me. It's
Listen.
usually always something very interesting. That's why I like to start far back. Like, when did it hit? Because you never know.
Yes. It did hit when I was 7.
Mm-hmm.
I started formally training when I was 16. And that was an amazing, unique experience that I had back home. Started doing pattern making and draping, apprenticing with a woman who was a renowned model. She was in the first graduating class at FIT. Before she retired, she taught at the Art Institute in Chicago, in your hometown.
Nice.
Before moving to the Detroit area with her husband. But fast forward, so people know me in the industry first and foremost as a women's wear designer. I've been in the luxury contemporary market pretty much my entire career. And I would love to say I'm truly 25, but I've actually been in the industry for 25 years, so I'm a little older.
Oh, you like to say you're 25?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been on the grind for it. You're going to start doing the math by the time this podcast is over, so I'll put it out there.
Forever young.
But Maison Black, really, in my next chapter of my design career, I really wanted to make sure everything that I've learned, everything that I've done, all my accomplishments, that I can pay it forward and continue to create space for our community, our Black community. I have been afforded an amazing career as a designer. I've had the opportunity to work at wonderful corporate design companies, have my own collection. I had my own collection in the between 2005, 2010, and to go back into corporate design before I launched Maison Black. Mm-hmm. So it's really about, I want to leave the industry and I want to leave this earth with having multiple Black heritage brands. I want to make sure that there are equitable opportunities for all of our Black designers, and to make sure that the resources are there for our Black designers and our Black community. And, that there's level playing fields. It starts with access. It starts with those of us who are at the table that can extend that table, build it out, open the door, keep that door open. Mm-hmm. And if the doors aren't open, collectively pick the locks. So the ones that come behind us, the next generation of Tories, Lanises, that the opportunity is there, that they don't have to work as hard, that we paved the way. So that's truly what Maison Black is, from a passion and a vessel standpoint. That's the premise. A lot of people thought I created it or came up with it during the pandemic, but this has been a long time vision of mine. And it really was, just having the right resources, even for myself, to be able to launch. And the resources are still very challenging for me, even with all the years of experience and accolades that I've had in the industry. But also, with that, I'm a creative first, in partnership, I guess, with the entrepreneurial spirit that I lead with. And from a design kind of, I call myself a creative Imagineer. It's how do we, I've spent so much time in the luxury contemporary sector of design. So how do I bring that experience to the customer and have these amazing, immersive, curated experiences, shopping our wonderful, uber talented Black designers and Black design product? Starting with apparel, that's where my core expertise is, but just even bringing that whole lifestyle to them. And being able to shop. And, I continue to challenge my friends, my family, my peers. It's very easy to actually dress yourself head to toe in Black design product. Mm-hmm. And
sure is. I do it all the time.
Yes. So sometimes,
daily.
One of my driving forces that, over the past 5 to 7 years, you would hear people say, I would buy Black designers or I buy Black design product if I knew where to go. Mm-hmm. And I would get a lot of people who would ask me, and I'm like, okay, well, we're going to solve the findability issue right here. So that was another driving force, mm-hmm. The findability. Maison Black is now the destination where you can find Black design product.
I love that. Now, as a new emerging designer, someone that's new, what is probably the first thing you would tell that designer to do when it comes to getting their brand started? I feel like that question is one of the most questions I get so often. It was just like, I'm an aspiring designer, I'm an emerging designer, I really want to do this. Where do I start?
That's a fully loaded question.
Completely loaded. Yes, completely loaded. I get it all the time. I feel like, my answer is, who is your target consumer, and how do you build out that foundation? Would you say that that's similar to what you would say if someone came to you with that loaded question?
Yes, it's twofold, because everyone thinks that they are a designer, can be a designer, wants to be a designer, and everyone wants to have their own collection as a designer. And a lot of us designers have all the creative juices in our pinky finger. Mm-hmm. We can design, create everything. But I would say there's still a readiness. So if I'm looking for a designer to carry on the site, or if I'm mentoring a designer, there's a sense of readiness that you need to have. It's like you have your innate ability, but then going back to what you said, are you clearing your customer? Are you clearing your brand positioning? How you want to enter the market? Who's in that market? What is that lifestyle of that customer in the market? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. And then how do you then balance that creative juice that you're going to need every season consistently, but then now you've got to learn how to monetize and sell that.
Right.
And build upon that every season. So, my first thing to emerging designers is, have you done the work? Have you apprenticed? Have you made a few mistakes on somebody else's dollar? Now, don't make too many mistakes on somebody else's dollar. But it may not end well. Yeah. But that is something that's so true. I had professors who gave me that advice, and you do. I was very strategic in my first, I would say, 5 to 8 years in the industry on what jobs I took, who I worked for, and what adjacencies of departments I had, because my end game at the time was to have my own line. And I knew that no one needed to teach me how to design per se. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there was opportunity in sharpening the iron as I, worked for different designers and companies. But what I really needed to know, and that was going to be that on-the-job training, is the production, the manufacturing, the supply chain, all that. Like, that's that area. The only way I was going to get that was on the job. How do I get to those factories? What's the difference between the denim factory, the leather factory, the sweater factory, the cut and sew factory, the woven factory? That I had to get, and that I had to learn. I would not have been the designer for my collection, my namesake collection, Tori Nichel. I wouldn't have been the mentor. I wouldn't have been as strong in launching Maison Black had I not had that experience. And not, and really been exposed to that. And not only locally in New York in the garment district, but then overseas, So I spent many years traveling to Europe, to Asia, Hong Kong. I spent a lot of time in Korea. So really important to put the work in and really to learn that entire product life cycle from really concept to consumer.
Gotcha. What would you say is one of the maybe the biggest mistakes you see designers make since you've worked with a lot of them? Is there anything that kind of pops out that you just see often?
Lord. the loaded question. Well, listen, we've all made this mistake. I made this mistake too. One, thinking that we're going to get investors right out of the gate. Okay. With our I think every emerging designer thinks that they're about to get an investor, right then. They got their line ready. They got their and the investors right there. That is like a needle in a haystack. There's a lot of work and preparation that goes behind it and pitching. So I would say that's one. And I would say not being clear and having clarity. This is something that you touched on a little earlier, but truly having clarity on how you want to enter the market, the brand positioning, your consumer, and what that strategy is behind it that's going to get you there. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, again, we're so focused as creatives, it's our God-given talent, and sometimes it's our Achilles heel that we don't then know the business know-how to then get us out of the starting gates. And one of the things I would urge, and I wish I had maybe learned this a little earlier on than I did, but for designers to really, yes, you're going to have a sales team or a merchandising team as you continue to grow, but really understand that merchandise planning and, and how to plan the line. And then even before that, I would say I'm going to take 2 steps back. The costing of garments. That is actually where the designers go wrong before they even get to the merchandise plan. And I see that today in Maison Black because so many designers, especially during the pandemic, were direct to consumer. And there's a huge shift when you go from that to the selling wholesale. And you're already at a deficit if you haven't been costing your garments right, because not only are you now potentially tripling the cost of your goods to go into wholesale, but you also may lose a consumer base that you've built loyalty and trust in. Absolutely. Because they're going to wonder why all of a sudden your prices are 2 to 3 times more.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. So my follow-up question is, do you think that some of these institutions that are, teaching design and stuff like that, do you think that they are giving these designers enough information for the amount that like tuition costs is like, FITs and Parsons and all these places? Do you feel like they're coming out of school with the proper tools, or do you feel like there's a lack there?
Lord, you're going to have my alma mater coming after me tomorrow. Just committed to
but there's nothing wrong with updates. This is constructive criticism, okay? Just on updating maybe, because I can say it. I don't feel that the curriculums that are giving them the tools that they need. I can openly say that, which is why I even started LC Apparel, because there's too many people coming out of design school with not even knowing like the basics of the basics, like you said, like a cost sheet, how to create a cost sheet, like how to do a merchandising plan, how to do a sales through, how to do a distribution plan, and I guess they want them to major in fashion business, but even the students that I get, because I do get a lot of different interns that are majoring in fashion business, they just lack so much. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like, are the curriculums outdated? Are the teachers not up to I'm like, what is it? What's happening?
Here's the thing. Yeah, as a creative, first and foremost, and a designer first and foremost, when you go to these specialized design schools, it is needed. You are creative. You want to be the best designer, be the best draper, the pattern maker, the best illustrator. And that truly is what we should be doing. We should be learning that, sharpening that, nurturing that. And I will always tell my designers and every design team in especially the corporate environments that I've worked in and led design teams on, never lose sight of your God-given talent, which is design. That is what got you in the door, and that's what's going to keep you in the door, because sometimes it gets so process-driven in these corporate companies, you can almost forget that you are actually the designer, the creative, or the one that's got to be future forward to next. So I'm like, never lose sight of that. That said, going back to your question on the colleges, universities, and institutions, yes, you can ask any one of my friends or colleagues, is that at some point, I would love to teach a business of fashion class. And no, I'm not going to be teaching you merchandise math, because none of us would make it in that. But just the fundamental structure of running a design business. If you want to have longevity in the industry, if you want to have a heritage brand, how do you, and when you look at some of the best design teams in the industry, going back far, there's usually the designer creative one, and then they always have that business partner,
right,
as the balance.
You're
so
right.
For those companies that have had that success, like, always look at like who was that person's right hand. There's a lot of consistency and synergy in that success with that. But what we miss is the business side of fashion, and then again, really getting into the nuts and bolts of when you talk about concept to consumer. So we do really well in the fashion schools with the conceptual part, as we should, because that's what a lot of these schools are, design centric. Right. But when you think about those electives and those supporting classes that we have, that's where we can build in, where sometimes now I look at some of the curriculums, and there's all these social media classes and social marketing classes. There's now like social media degrees, and I'm like, what the is it? I need designers coming out of school to know the supply chain. I need them to understand the manufacturing. I need them to know how their raw materials or that pre-development standpoint in developing fabrics, that's actually a huge void and miss. Not everybody, I don't talk a lot about it, but half of my degree from Michigan State was in textile design, but I always had an affinity to fabrics too. So it was kind of natural for me. But that is a piece of the puzzle too that I wish that design schools, which enforced and made it more a part of the design process.
Textile.
Yes.
You know what's crazy? Maybe that's like a Midwest thing, because I learned a lot about textiles. Like, I had to take chemistry and art, textiles and dyes, like in college. And I went to Columbia College, Chicago. So I know how to make acrylic from scratch. I know the difference between like dyeing and printing. But when I came here, a lot of them don't even know the difference between it and the woven. And and I think it's crazy because we learn how to make felt and we learn how to quilt. So not only did we learn all the principles of the chemistry and the textiles, stuff like that, but we also learn like different techniques of fabric manipulation. And that was a part of our curriculum.
Exactly. And it's so important, even, to properly drape a gown or a blouse, whatever you're draping, or drafting a pattern, really understanding the functionality of the fabric and how it moves and the difference and the construction. So that's a component that I see even when I recruit talent, at the design companies I've worked at, where I would say SCAD in Savannah has one of the stronger,
they do
more fashion-based or programs where they have an influence and emphasis on the textile.
Well, yes,
and
I've
fabric.
had 3 interns from there, and they were great.
Yes,
I want to give them jobs, but they wanted to go back.
Let me tell you, if I knew then what I know now about SCAD, like I do think it's a phenomenal school, but they have a very strong program, and I do think that they do a good job of balancing that textile component of their program. But yes, that is missing. The business piece is missing, and as you said, there's a couple components to the business part. It's the all the kind of everything that goes into costing and getting to allowing you to know how to position your product in the market. So everything under the cost of goods, the bill of materials, that whole piece needs to be truly taught in school. So designers understand that, because everything you do, if you're working for somebody, at a certain point, your merchant's going to be like, oh no, take those buttons off. I'm gonna make it a closureless blazer. Take that collar off. It's gonna be a closureless, collarless blazer. You're gonna be like, well, now I got a skinned cat. That's not what I designed. So understanding that, because then the creative part is, then how do you then creatively cost engineer a garment to protect the integrity of your design? Without it getting stripped down when you go to present or whatever the end goal is. And that is something that truly can be taught, but a lot of designers, if they don't know, that's where they stumble when they either have their own line or if they're within a company. But that is part of a curriculum that truly needs to be taught. There's a science to it, and then there's a creative math and dance to how you cost engineer and protect your design. Absolutely. And your design intent.
I love that. Okay, so before we wrap up and get out of here, my last segment to wrap up is called It's a Muse. If you would just like to share, Tori, something that you think that would help or inspire or motivate someone else, a designer specifically, whether it's a book, a mantra, a course, anything that you think that a designer can benefit from, that kept you motivated and inspired.
Oh my gosh. Where does one begin? I mean, there's a lot of mantras out there. I could say something that one of my old design teams used to tease me on, which it's very simple and cheesy: live, laugh, love. And a day like today, which is kind of heavy, you really do want to start there. For me, my creative juices and how I get inspired and stay inspired truly has changed and evolved over the years as technology has changed and evolved. One of the things I still like to truly stay connected with, I came up in the industry where, the actual physical magazines were a thing and you ran to the newsstands, or, in New York, you had your favorite newsstand guy that you would get your, monthly, if you weren't getting them in the mail, that you would have get your monthly magazines from. So I still truly enjoy and really get inspired by, again, very simple, but art books, or coffee table books, whether they're music. Again, I can't get enough of art books, travel books, interiors. Interiors really inspire me. Very visual. I wish social media would go away, quite honestly. If we could have the first generation of Instagram back, where it was all about beautiful pictures, and people are really curating their life stories, or showing you all these beautiful images from their travels. Now it's like curated to the point it's filtered. You don't know what's fake or real, but there was an authenticity at the beginning of that was really beautiful and very inspiring. And then, I still, the OG in me just still loves watching the shows. When Fashion Week kicks off in New York, and then it goes from, country to country, there's still nothing better than that. And again, maybe that's the OG in me a bit, but now I get to experience and be a part of the shows. One of the fun things is, once I was the designer behind the curtains and behind the brands, and now I'm as an owner of a retailer, I'm there now in a different capacity as a guest. But I would tell designers protect that creative energy or spark by any and all means necessary. And for me, I have to go into a zone to, if I'm working on, whether I'm working on a show, a big event, everything I do really has a creative kind of push or bend to it. But protect that space. It's really important. It's really important to also give ourselves that grace to when we hit that creative block, to stop, pause, and then reconnect or re-energize, because we do have a tendency as designers to burning down to where there's no wick in the candle left. Right. And so before we hit that burnout stage, how do we take a step back and then come in full force too? It's really important to find that balance. And it took me a long time in my career to really appreciate that. I think you get to a certain point where your body and age just doesn't allow you anything else but to try to find and achieve that balance. But, making sure that there's that wellness component that is protected, because without that, we can't be great in our creative spaces.
Love that. Well, thank you so much, Tori, for joining me. It has been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to seeing you next week. And if you just want to throw out like your social media handles and just let people know how to find you and how to connect with you.
Absolutely. You can find me at Tori Nichel on Instagram, Facebook, pretty much on every social media platform. And Maison Black, you can find us at Maison Black, New York. And you can find us on every social media platform using that handle as well. And we also, the docuseries I produce is called Black Behind the Brands. There's not a lot of content up there. You can find all of our content through our site, but that is the division that houses the docuseries, the backstories on the designers that we do.
Love that. Thank you so much. I will make sure I put all of that information in the show notes as well. And as I always say, stay black. Peace out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful week.
You too. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.